Hello everyone, my name is Joseph Kabuleta and I'm welcoming you to a new podcast that is going to be running every week, and with me will be Idris Chigundu of Peg Media, and we shall be talking about matters that are of great concern to this country in a way that is unique from what has ordinarily been taking place on the Ugandan media. Idris, you're welcome.
Thanks, Joseph. Maybe we can dig in immediately. Why did you settle for the morning after? What does it mean?
I decided to call it the morning after because there's been a lot of talk. All the political talk currently is about the dispensation that currently is. But I know that that dispensation is coming to an end. And we are going to wake up one day and the dynasty of Museveni is gone. And the purpose of this podcast is to make sure that we are ready as a citizenry for what will come afterwards. Are we ready to take our country from then onwards? Because we shall have a country to run afterwards. And for the most part, that country has been run by one man who had all the power. But that's going to end, and it will end inevitably.
Of course.
Now what do we do the morning after? We wake up one morning, and suddenly he's not there. I'm not going to go into the house otherwise, but he's not there one morning, and then we have a country to run. How are we going to set about to do that?
Yeah, man, Joseph, this is a big undertaking. More than 70% of Ugandans have known one person in their life. I mean, President Yoweri Museveni. So, can you paint for us a picture of whether those people, many of them, could be mentally prepared to wake up to a country where Museveni isn't in charge?
No, they aren't. That's actually the whole point here, because when I traversed the country, when I stood for president 5 years ago, the one thing I realized is that the perception of a Uganda without Museveni sounds so alien to most Ugandans. They don't even think about it. So while there will be people promising them that we're going to get him off power and so on, they have not seen it. They cannot envision it that there's going to come a time when he's not the president. And yet that time is actually going to come. Now, those are exactly the kind of people that we want to target with this podcast. We just talk about Uganda without him, without necessarily having him as the subject. Because what he has done over these 40 years is he has placed his name and his aura in every single conversation that happens.
And every sphere of our society.
Exactly, every sphere of influence. Now, all the political talk is about him. Whether people like him or hate him, somehow is at the center of it all. And all the political elite feed off the crumbs that fall off his table. So somehow he sets the agenda for everything that has been done. Now I want us to have a discussion where we are setting our own agenda independent of him, because that reality is going to happen sooner rather than later. And now that's why I call it the morning after. The morning after, we wake up and suddenly we have a country to run. I'm talking about collectively, 45, 50 million Ugandans. We have a country to run, we have a country to rescue and to turn around, and he's not. And this person who has been the subject of every conversation is no longer in the picture. Now that is why I call it the morning after, and that's what we are going to be focusing on. Not focusing on the subjects that are being handed over by him. Now there is this. Now currently there is the subject of who is going to be speaker, and now that is captivating everybody. But the reality is, regardless of who is speaker, it's not going to change your life. It's not going to change anybody's life apart from the lives of the individuals who are themselves going to take the position, whoever it is. So it doesn't change anything. Now, outward, there are people who expect a service from their country. But all the debate is about, the crumbs that are falling off Museveni's table.
Not the real issues that will obtain in the event of his exit.
Exactly.
People are not focusing on what kind of Uganda we want to have when Museveni is not in the picture. Or whether we shall have a situation of chaos or of calm, all those kinds of questions.
Now, that's a good question, because the situation we shall have, chaos or calm, will depend on how prepared we are. And now, of course, the one thing we've had 40 years of a very selfish leader, perhaps the most selfish man that ever walked this earth, because he has made sure there's hardly any thinking beyond him. And so now what that does is there can easily be chaos if we are not prepared.
Joseph, you know that there are some Ugandans who even think in the rural areas around election time that even Museveni sees how they vote.
There is
that kind of. I mean, there is a certain group of Ugandans.
Yes, and the reason
that kind of stronghold he has over them, that even he knows the kind of choices they make at elections, and as thus even they fear to vote otherwise.
Yeah, of course. Yes. And the thing is this: there is a reason that has happened because a lot of the political debates, even in the top media houses, will make sure they keep you at a surface level where they are not talking about real issues that's of any form of substance. So it's just drama. Actually, a lot of the talk shows. Maybe we're a country that loves drama, and so there are drama people, saying this and the other ones abusing the other ones, and people attacking each other, attacking each other's personalities. And now the people who actually sit down to watch these political talk shows do not live any wiser, do not know any more about their country, having heard what was on television than they did before. All they know is that Idris is this, Kabuleta is this, Idris is this, and now the next day there will be two other people pointing in each other's faces, and it's good for drama, but it's not good for the country. And now, that being that as it is, how if at the top level of discussion, it is not going down, even at the top level of discussion, the subjects are petty. Yes. How are the people at the very bottom going to actually be, disabused of all those mysteries and all those things which we had when we were young? So now, maybe that's what we are going to do. And now, the reality is that there will be some bottlenecks, like there's a catchment where make sure that some things do not go down, so that people, think in a certain way.
No, but I mean, even before you go into those details, I think let's begin from the scene setting. What do you envisage in the first 24 hours when news filters through that Museveni is no longer in charge of this country? You just paint for me. What do you think will be the reaction of the ordinary person on the street, or ordinary person on the street, the businessman, the soldier in the barracks, assuming this change happened suddenly or unexpectedly?
And it will happen suddenly and unexpectedly, but also very soon from now.
How soon?
Very soon from now. Now, when that happens, first of all, there will be a time of shock. But depending on how much we've actually discussed Uganda without him, that will determine how prepared we are for that. Because there has to be a discussion going on, something ongoing, because which is not based on, as I've said, feeding off the crumbs that fall off his table. But what I want Ugandans to know, and this is very, very important as far as I'm concerned, what I want Ugandans to know is that it can take us a very short time to walk back the damage that Museveni has done in 40 years, if we are ready for that moment. It can take us 5 short years.
Why do you describe it as damage? I don't know Ugandans. There are people who think that he has done a lot of tremendous things, that actually he has advanced us more in the last 40 years. There's a certain group of Ugandans. You may not agree with them, Joseph, but why do you particularly refer to it as damage?
The damage is clear, and I don't want us to go into that, because you see, if we compare ourselves to ourselves, then we are good. If I go on the 100-meter starting line and I run alone, guess who is going to win?
You are going to win.
I'm going to win. So, but if I'm running with you, God knows. I mean, I may or may not win. That's the point. Yes. That's the point. So now, if you want to see the damage that he has done, look at how other countries. I'll give you examples. And here is the thing. I'll give you examples. For instance, look at the countries surrounding us, Kenya, Tanzania. Look at the trade deficits we have with those countries.
Yes.
And look at how they have moved vis-a-vis how we've moved. Look at how we are still grappling with, making simple roads in the city, whereas people moved on from that after 40 years.
And Joseph, one of the most, talking about how those countries have moved. The other day I was seeing this debate. We have become Kenya and Tanzania have become the food basket for Uganda, which wasn't the case 20, 30 years ago.
Now, I thank you very much for raising that, because here is the thing. I was looking at the balance of trade between Uganda, Kenya, and Tanzania, the region, basically.
Yes.
And
ESC.
ESC. And our balance of trade is negative about $500 million with Kenya.
Yes.
And maybe that's not so shocking. But what is shocking is we have a negative balance of trade of about $1.5 billion with Tanzania. Now that is scandalous. It's not shocking, it's scandalous. And some of the things that tip the balance of trade in their favor are things like, we import $200 million of rice from Tanzania. Now that's scandalous, because what comparative advantage does Tanzania have over us?
We had our rice schemes, the Chubuku.
I mean, we have the best land. Tanzania is scraping for some arable land in all their massive, land mass. We have almost more than 90% of our country arable land.
Almost more than 80, actually. We have the most arable land, as in a percentage of our total land size compared to Kenya and Tanzania.
Now, you see, when you import $200 million
worth of rice
from a neighboring country, that is money you are giving away, which is supposed to be kept in the country for people who would grow rice and actually feed the rice, and so that money doesn't go out. It stays in.
We import potatoes Irish from Kenya.
Of course, we import Irish from Kenya.
We used to do potatoes here in Kabuleta.
We even import $20 million worth of groundnuts from Tanzania. Groundnuts
and DR Congo, and a lot of groundnuts which are grown in the forest of Congo. There's a dealer who was telling me a lot of the groundnuts comes from Congo and Kenya.
Now, you see how scandalous that is. Uganda. The famed Uganda with our 2 seasons, and you've had all those things. Our arable land, 2 seasons, and all that. And we are importing groundnuts. We are importing $200 million worth of rice from Tanzania. That's scandalous. Now, apart from things like wheat, which maybe we would struggle to,
because of our condition,
to produce here, and a few other things. There is no reason why Uganda should import any food stuff. And do you know why Tanzania? In 2015, the balance of trade with Tanzania was something close to 200 negative in their favor, close to 200 million.
I think for the viewers, it means that we import more than Tanzania buys from us.
Yes.
So that's what creates the imbalance.
Now it was about 200. Now, and we're actually exporting rice to Tanzania. Now,
at that time,
yes,
2015.
2015. Now, what happened is when Magufuli became president. Now, here is why I tell you, it's a lot of it is about leadership. When he became president, the first thing he said is, we are not going to import any food stuff from anybody. Then he made agriculture fashionable. You see, government set standards. He made agriculture fashionable, so students were coming from university to go and do agriculture. Now, the net product is by all this big balance of trade. In 2019, the negative balance of trade was actually $400 million.
So it had doubled between it had doubled between 2015 and 4 years.
But now, from 2019 to 2025, it has moved from 400 million to 1.5 billion. And still growing. Now, and a lot of it is actually agriculture.
What do you attribute that to on the side of Uganda, for example? What has gone wrong over those years?
Now everything has gone wrong because
agriculture space.
Now I don't want us to talk so much about what has gone wrong as much as what we would do as a country.
Or what should we do?
We should do, or what we will do the morning after to reverse it. And why I am convinced that in 5 short years we can turn this trend around completely. Because you see, unlike what it is in other countries, where they try so hard, they are trying so hard to have, to produce what they consume and consume what they produce, and they're actually pushing in a certain direction. Uganda, there has been a deliberate move to actually kill production. So now when you have a student who is studying very hard, waking up and, reading and, attending every class and doing everything he has to do, but he fails, then you have a big problem. If, however, you have a student who is failing because he's careless and because he doesn't study, he doesn't have any time for class, then that's an easier problem to deal with. That's the problem Uganda has, because ours is easier to deal with because we just have to change the mindset. First of all, the first thing you do is just stop agricultural imports, except for a few things. Of course, there are things like, apples.
So going the Magufuli way?
Yeah, exactly. The same.
But Joseph, earlier on when you had these discussions around this podcast, you said that you didn't want to, at this point, to talk about individuals in this kind of thing, in this kind of the Uganda after. But you have brought an example of, you thought that individuals wouldn't be, you didn't want to individualize it and say that maybe individuals wouldn't matter, but you have just brought the case of Magufuli, Magufuli, yes. His strong-willedness and how it changed the fortunes of Tanzania's agricultural fortunes. Don't you think in this morning after scheme of Uganda, don't we see some sort of individuals? Won't we need a certain kind of individuals? So
this is what we are trying to produce, because that's leadership. What he did is leadership.
A benevolent dictator, if I may call him.
Yeah, of course, he had his, tendencies, authoritarian tendencies. But he was a man who was pushing towards, development. And all these things happened as a result. He did a lot of things to promote their tourism. He did a lot. So there are certain things we can do which we have not done.
Shall Uganda need a certain kind of benevolent individual dictator or someone of a strong personality in the post-Museveni era, maybe to steward our country?
Let me tell you, that was his nature. That was his personality.
Yes.
As a person. Now, whoever it is that comes across, we hope he's not going to be that kind of personality. We hope it's going to be something. But then, we also hope it's somebody who is decisive in decision making. Because one of the things we've had here as a country, and one of the reasons we've been very easy to manipulate as a nation for all these years, is because we are not decisive.
We have this kind of inertia when it comes to taking crucial...
And we love to discuss issues. We discuss, and somehow our enemy...
We follow a lot of rules. There are regulations. And take it through parliament, and then there have to be consultations among the people before a major law is brought. Joseph, that's part of the democratic process.
No, let me tell you. The democratic process, but I'll tell you this, the process that ended the production was not democratic. It was authoritarian. So the leader we have knows how to be an authoritarian when he wants. But when he doesn't want something done, when he doesn't want to do something, he knows what to do. You put it in the realm of discussion. For instance, when he came, he did not want Uganda to have a national language because he did not want to foster national unity. He has not been about national unity. So he didn't want us to have a national language. So what he did,
around the national language.
So what he did, he told us, let's discuss what is a national language. 40 years later, we're still discussing. And that's how we think. Now, if he had actually wanted us to have a national language, he could have told us even any language. He could have chosen any and we would be speaking it right now. But he did not want it because it would foster national unity. And that is not his style. His style is division. So now, what we need is somebody who is decisive. And also we need to know what our weaknesses are. You see, we discuss a lot. We discuss a lot. And we do not discuss in lieu of actually making sharp decisions. Now, this is what we've decided. Now we are moving forward. When we want to get consensus, there is nothing in which there is 100% consensus. That doesn't happen. There has to be, we've discussed, this is the best scenario.
But what you're suggesting would lead to a subversion of the legal processes. If what you're suggesting, if we got decisively, it means that at some point they will have to subvert the established legal processes to take decisions that are deemed to be beneficial.
Like which legal processes?
I mean, if for example, someone needs if someone orders,
okay, let me give you an example.
Someone says this road should be given to this company without going through the PPDA.
That's different. No, that's totally different. That's totally different. That's different from getting a road like Ginger Road 7 years later, after people were compensated, Ginger Express, 7 years after people were compensated, you're still discussing. Now that's different. We are not, nobody is subverting the PPDA process. It's just that you have, it's just inertia, indecisiveness, and I don't know what it is that. So now, all those years, very soon people who were compensated would actually be saying, the time of compensation ran out. We need to be compensated again. And the road hasn't even taken off. What do you call that? So there is a certain decisiveness that we have to foster as Ugandans.
Among Ugandans at all levels.
At all levels.
Public servants, civil servants, politicians, and everything.
When we've wanted things to be done, they've been done. when somebody puts their foot down, good things. But when they didn't want to be done, they put it out in the realm of discussion. But here is what I'm saying. Here is why I'm convinced that it will take us. There are things we are going to talk about, in even consequent things. We have to talk about, first of all, getting people back into production, which has been a big problem. Removing welfare states, getting people. Yeah?
How do you get people back into production when very many people sold land to ride borders in towns?
Because all those things are changed by policy. As I've told you, people will go where there is money.
There's a lot of abandoned farmland.
No, because
young men, there are no young men to work on it.
No, let me tell you. That's what I was telling you. When the government makes something profitable, people will go there by themselves. That's the action. Let me go back to the example of Magufuli. When he said we are going to make agriculture profitable, and people actually
of all levels, civil servants, many people all went and
started doing agriculture.
Even now, coffee here.
Yes, and agriculture was profitable at some stage here, and then we killed that production. And if we are going to actually get production back, that's the first place we are going to start. But there are so many other places where we are going to, first, as I've told you, deal with the issue of balance of trade. As a country, our negative balance of trade is like $5 billion.
Within the ESC?
No, generally,
globally.
$5 billion.
That is huge.
In 1986, when a certain man came promising a fundamental change, we had
not a mere change of guard.
We had a positive balance of trade of $30 million. Positive. That means we were exporting more than we were importing.
Although the figure was small, 30 million. Okay.
No, but it was positive. Yes. Right now, we would even die to break even. When you're talking about we are so far away from breaking even that even negative 500 million would be a big improvement. But we had a positive balance of trade of 30 million. By 1989, it had eroded. We were going into the negatives. Now we're at negative 5 billion.
When the sub because and all those things.
And the positive balance of trade was in spite of the fact that we were dealing with raw agricultural produce, which had no value addition. Were selling just agricultural produce.
Which we are still more or less.
Yes, but we were selling a lot of it, and it was in such an organized way that even if we are losing money, as you've heard them saying, losing money because of adding no value, still we are gaining money because of our comparative advantage, because of our soils and our weather,
marketing boards,
and all that. So the first thing you do, look at, if we are to walk our way back from this damage, what advantage do we have? What comparative advantage do we have as a nation? You start from there. Something of which we have a real advantage, which is undeniable, and that is agriculture. But that's one area actually where we're lagging behind. So we surrendered our advantage, and now we are importing food from outside. We're importing food, we're importing fertilizer, we're importing, animal feeds and so on.
So the morning after, we need to put this agricultural issue on the table and see.
Yes, first of all,
and you see how we go back to the good day, or even how we leapfrog other.
Yeah, because if we can first of all make it profitable for people and remove the bottlenecks that have been put there. I'll tell you this: people will do agriculture if there was profit in it, but there is none. That's why they are selling land.
This PDM is essentially focused on agriculture activities.
No, now you see that's the other thing.
Someone would add, they have done plan for modernization of agriculture. We have had so many schemes.
But you see now, PDM is some kind of welfare state because giving money to people under the guise that they are going to spend it and multiply it and bring it back.
And rear 5 chicken.
And in reality, they don't bring it back. How much of that money is already brought back? And those people do not need handouts. But you see, if you're a dictator and you want to rule for 40 years, you need a mass of people who are depending on handouts, because then they will not question. I mean, that becomes the basis of your continuity in power. Because governments all over the world are removed by middle class. When somebody becomes middle class, they start thinking about power. That's why the first thing that socialist thinking people,
Mm.
dictators do is remove the middle class.
The communist thinking and saying that we should all be equal. We have they create that false equivalence in social.
And what they achieve is for equivalence in poverty.
Mm.
And so you get people who have not produced anything, who have not been taught to produce, who perhaps at some stage could produce and will produce when we encourage them to produce. And then you give them money and tell them that they are supposed to pay it back, and they are not going to pay it back. And
of course
they sometimes they even lose whatever little they had, because if you force them to pay it back, they are going to sell their land. So the man turns out worse off.
But you and I
than
know
what
that
he was.
that is just political money.
No, it's political money. That's the point. And the people, what's worse is the people who are getting it know it's political money. And they want them to know it's political money.
Joseph,
so
let me give an example. You know, there was the Youth Livelihood Fund. Shortly before the 2021, which government was over-publicizing, giving money they will tell youth to organize, and they give them money. I think the then PS of Gender, PS Bijimana, there's a group in Busoga that had squandered money. They had given money to do a poetry project, they squandered, and they are moving to arrest them. But that's also around the time that Bobi Wine emerges. And you know, he had more appeal towards the youth. So Museveni apparently called the Bijimana and said, "You man, leave the what? Don't bring me problems. Don't arrest them. We shall handle it." But these guys had squandered more than 70 million.
No, but
so eventually the guys walked away scot-free. They never paid the money simply because the president thought it would to be poor political capital for him in Busoga. They wanted to arrest the young men, and Museveni said, "Don't arrest them."
Yeah, but I mean, they know themselves that happens. There's a time they went, and Parliament passed that they are going to have 200 billion shillings to help people who have demonstrated that they have the ability to multiply money, who can borrow money at a certain level. And now this is not PDF.
That's through Uganda Development Bank or something?
People who have demonstrated that, I'm doing this business and I have this amount of capital. If you give me a push, I've demonstrated I can, do this. The circle of URA, the MPs themselves and took the money. So
because MPs also have a circle.
Yeah, so it never did any of the things. So if you actually want to incur the wrath of that man, you do something
Bukenya was using that upland rights scheme to mobilize also for political support, since it took him to every part of the country. That during the day he would promote upland rights scheme, in the evenings, then he would meet the religious leaders, the political leaders, wherever I would stay, and then talk about other things other than rights. Of course, that was the argument then. And
no, let me tell you, that is him. Okay, why did Museveni take it up?
And they said they would take it up. Remember when they stopped?
No,
but they never.
And that is him. But the thing is, there are so many other people who tried other things.
Yes.
Which could have taken people out of power. So the point I'm trying to make here is that we have a student who is very careless, who has deliberately refused to study, and all we need to do is to change a few things in his character, his behavior. Attend class and that student is going to excel, and that student is Uganda. Now, when we will get back production, and that is going to be our first step, when we get back production and 70% of the population is involved in some kind of production, 70%, rather than sitting down and waiting for freebies from government, then we shall be in a position now where we can start talking about things like governance, things the finer aspects. How then do we govern and so on?
How will the military be? How does what kind of shape will we deal with this? I know. But then still, Joseph, on the issue of agriculture, coffee is going to remain a key.
It is.
Key, even in the post-Museveni. You have followed the debate on the value addition.
Yes, I have.
There are people who argue that actually Uganda, what we need to do is just to increase our comparative advantages in the production of green beans. Let's not join the value addition bandwagon, because there are companies that are doing it, companies that control the global markets, companies that have developed logistical networks for the last 100 years, that we can't play in that league. And some say that, for example, look at this Ntungamo thing. It's an excuse maybe to siphon money.
No, it's a money laundering thing.
Why can't we increase production? Just increase production, because that's where our comparative advantage is.
You see,
we're not simply going to make a Nescafe. to dominate the global.
We had made the Nescafe.
Good African coffee.
Let me tell you, Lugasiza tried good African coffee.
Yes.
He was in the business of actually making farmers rich because they were planting coffee. He was getting
when
it,
you read this book and you see the frustrations of getting to the shelves in the UK
and they were buying.
Eventually,
he was destroyed by us, not by them. Remember? Because he was fighting enemies without and within. But the enemies who toppled him were the enemies within. And he actually had now the very people who fought him and destroyed his dream are the ones telling us about value addition. It's just those are just talking points. Because all these things have been done before. There is nothing that even the value addition of all the and I talk a lot about the textiles.
Yes.
These bushmen came and destroyed our production. People would plant, cotton, and they would spin it from Lina spinning mill. They take it to 19, and all our bed sheets, uniforms, and what you remember. You remember Unato what?
Yes.
And
I remember all
those things were made in Uganda, and were dressing in uniforms, and bed sheets are not from Uganda.
Yes, I remember even.
Who destroyed that? The very people now who are telling us about value addition. Let me tell you, if the day you realize that, don't listen to that man. Because what he says and what he does are
so the value addition gospel is something.
It's just a way of making sure that people do not earn money from coffee. Because there was a time people used to earn money from coffee, and I give this a lot. In 1986, Uganda's coffee exports were $94 million.
Of course, they have increased several times.
$94 million. 1986. 94. I just wanted to. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. $94 million. I just want you to have that in your mind. But in that time, when I was in school, people were studying on coffee, people were driving cars on coffee, people were driving motorcycles on coffee, $94 million. Now we are $2 billion. You will not see those people because all the people who are made, 9 of the 10 companies, top exporters are foreigners. So what he does is he gets the coffee, takes it out of the populace. Now when coffee prices went high, yes. And you remember the argument about UCD. So I don't want to stop. You see, a journalist and you're putting me back to talking about what.
No, I got the coffee thing because it's going to be a key thing in the Uganda after.
It is going to be, but now.
But how do we? Yes. But the argument. Do we value the value? Do we follow that? The value addition chain. Do we concentrate on?
What you said is absolutely perfect. We don't want to run before we can walk. The walking is first of all making sure that people are earning money from their coffee beans, okay, and getting some sort of good life from their coffee beans. Now, when we cross that bridge, then we can run into value addition. Now, if somebody doesn't want you to develop, he will tell you to run before you can crawl. So, and he found us crawling, and if he had left us crawling, we would now be running. But he stopped our crawling. And now even we can't crawl. So now that's the problem. So now we have to get back into production. Production of everything, like at least half of the things we
What do we need to do to kickstart production? What specific things do we need to undertake?
Very good. First of all, we have to awaken the issue of local investors. We've spent 40 years being told foreign investors. They are local people who can invest. But you see, they are so frustrated. If you try here, because Museveni sees every local person who tries to get rich, he sees it through the prism of politics. Yes. So he knows that. So he first of all destroyed the rich people whom he found because he was scared. He was scared that they are going to take over. So now the people who come here and get money are people who are foreigners because they are not going to get interested in politics.
So you have to fund the indigenous.
They don't need funding. They just need you to remove the handcuffs from them. Because what he has, they don't need favors. They just need you to remove the handcuffs from them.
What are those handcuffs?
Those handcuffs are, you try. Do you know why every person who is involved in production ends up being anti-government? Because they realize that you get to a certain level and there are all these bottlenecks which have been put there. And now you realize when people have no ambition and they are peasants, that's when they support the government.
There is
and that's why he wants to keep them as peasants. But now once you start a business and you're doing either import or export or something, or trying to do an industry and so on, you realize that the system has been set up against you. So immediately you become anti-government, anti-Museveni, because you realize that there is a ceiling beyond which you are not supposed to jump.
But Joseph,
so now the thing is, those people, there are people here who are astute businessmen, astute manufacturers, and so on. They don't need favors. They just need a proper tax policy. They just need to open up the space and not to think about them as people who are going to come for political power and therefore have the need to come and destroy them. Just let them be. In 3 years, you'll see. There's a lot of creativity here. And in three short years, while you are dealing with the peasant population or the agriculture, you leave the business people, remove all the handcuffs, and remove all the bottlenecks, remove the hurdles, and tell them now run without any hindrance.
That is one
in 3 short years.
That is one issue on how we can unlock our production. What are other mechanisms you think? Do you think it's the only thing we need to do?
No, there are the number of other things.
Government policies in certain sectors have to change.
Yeah, of course, because now when you look at most of the rich people who have, everybody is looking at the budget money.
Of course.
There are no rich industrialists. Maybe perhaps the last.
We have tenderpreneurs.
A tenderpreneur, exactly. Now perhaps the last person who you. Okay, I don't want to say the last person, but you don't have people like in the caliber of what Mwana was. Somebody who was producing something and actually involved in production.
Maybe Aga.
No, they are there. I'm just giving you an example.
Yeah, but there are few, like they say.
There are very few. All of them are looking for.
That's a dying breed.
They are looking for government tenders, most of the people. Now, the people like Murwana, who actually started businesses where they are producing their milk, they are producing batteries, they are involved in toothbrushes and plastics and so on. Real production, things which people consume every day. That is a dying breed. Why? Government policy. So, and pushing people in a certain direction. Now, even all this border economy of everybody selling land and buying a border, because that's the one thing where everybody thinks this is somewhere I'm going to earn a living.
And a lot of these border loan companies are owned by the powerful also.
Yeah, of course, as with everything else. But we don't have to go to that. But what I'm trying to say is this, as we come to the end of this show, is that a lot of Ugandans are despondent about the situation that we find ourselves in.
When they gave up, what can they do?
But
what shall they do the morning after? Actually, with that despondency.
But what I'm trying to say is that we are not far away. We have not swum so far down the river that there is no way back. There is a way back. Okay, we can swim right back and make this country productive and make this country, admirable. By first of all, and I'm breaking it down, first of all, starting in the areas where we have a comparative advantage. I've said that. Secondly, removing all the hurdles that have been set up by bad policy. Thirdly, removing all these tenderpreneurs and so on, and making sure that people who are rich are actually those who are involved in production, not those who are involved in patronage.
We have a lot of administrative bureaucracy. We have a lot of so many civil servants and people earning a lot of money. That's also one of our contributes to our problems. We have a lot of, when you look at the administrative bureaucracy, the civil servants, the districts, the what, and the billions and trillions that go to them. Someone says that one way of unlocking our productive capacities to reduce on those numbers and put this money in the productive sectors. Do we need assistant RCCs? Do we need all this? Because also that's one. Because it's a system of patronage, Okay,
now the thing is, there's a lot of wastage, and I don't want us to go into that because we are running out of time. But there is still very little produced. Because let me tell you, if we are producing a lot, and like for instance, if you're adding a salary of 200,000, and somebody says that you can chop here and chop here. There's a limit how much you can chop with that amount of money. So the first...
They say you have a poor saving culture.
Poor saving culture. With 200,000. Now, the first thing you need is at least increase my salary to 1 million. Then we can talk about saving. Because 200,000, I'm just barely getting by. So now we have to, first of all, increase the amount of money that is being generated within here. We'll talk about all those things because in consequence shows the issues of wastage, the issues of bureaucracy, and all that. But what I wanted to emphasize here today is as a way of hope for the morning after is that we have not swum too far down the river that we cannot come back. We'll come back and we'll come back stronger. And that's my final word for today.
Thanks, Joseph, for setting the stage for our podcast. I think they're going to be a blockbuster. Our viewers, Thank you very much. We shall be back next week for another episode.